Kevin and I went to U of I together.
That's right.
And over the past 10 years, he has set goals for himself and has achieved those goals. And he has worked hard to make a name for himself in Chicago and, in many cases, around the nation. So he's here to explain a little bit about himself and his story. And I highly encourage you to ask a ton of questions. Because how rare is it that you have an opportunity to have someone who has made a name for themselves and be able to ask questions of that person. So by all means, let's give Kevin a big round of applause.
Hey, thank you, pal, so much for having me here today. It's a real honor to be able to talk to everybody for a little bit. And all the while, again, I'm just like writing on my nights, on my weekends, working on shows and productions with friends. And eventually what happened is I met some really cool people. Yeah, man.
How did you get into being an artistic director of Golden? How do you get in?
How do you do that? I'm not sure. You know, you find the things that you're passionate about and you really invest in those. So I always say that you have to spend time in the places and with the people to be a part of those things that you want to do. So for me, I really wanted to perform comedy and write comedy. So you have to spend time in those areas. You have to invest in that. If you want to be a writer, you need to write. If you want to make films, you need to create films. That's the only way that that stuff's going to happen. I mean, you can take classes and all of that, but at the end of the day, you need to do the thing that you're passionate about. Otherwise, it won't happen. So this was like before Kickstarter was well known or anybody knew what it was. So they put the game up on Kickstarter and I was like, hey, I love games and I see these guys are from Chicago and I always have loved to support other people's endeavors and things that they do. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, do you want to produce a show based on this game sometime? It's so funny, we really love what you're all about. And so we started a friendship there. And as the game continued to grow in popularity and they would invest in things, they would work on other interesting projects, or new writing projects, or trying out new expansion packs and stuff like that. And they would reach out to me and my friends and they would say, hey, we need help writing X, Y, or Z, or producing this show, or working on that project. And so we would just help them along the way there. And eventually they grew to a point where they were like, hey, we want to like open a small theater and this new office and we want to expand and do other things. Will you work with us? And I said, yes, I will work with you. So I've been working with them for a few years before it became like my full-time life and job. Cool. Cool. Sweet.
Was it scary for you to like bouncing, not like going between like from archaeology to games?
I've always played it pretty safe with my life. I think like I never have like completely let go of something before I would dive into something else. So I like always made sure that I had a stable base for my life. Like I had a job and I'm like, well, I'm really passionate about this stuff and I want to have this be my future and my career and my life. But all the while, it's like finding all of your free time, your nights, your weekends, and you're really working hard to achieve those goals. And like that was a really cool thing that Jeff said earlier. It's like when I first set out in Chicago, I said, okay, sort of understood what the comedy scene was like in the city, and I was like, okay, well, I want to do a show at this comedy venue, and I want to produce a show at Second City. And so I sort of set these lofty goals. Even though you might not accomplish them, I didn't accomplish every single one of them directly, but I hit a lot of them. And so every time that I could set a goal and I would hit it, you have to think to yourself, okay, well, I've accomplished that. What's the thing beyond that? You know, what's the next thing? Rather than being too overwhelmed by like, oh, I want to be on SNL one day or something like that. And I have friends that are, and that's great. And they set those goals for themselves. They're like, well, I want to be in TV, and I'm here in Chicago, and I'm creating comedy and being a performer. What are those steps along the way? What are the things? What are the paths to get there? And they're not always laid out straight in front of you. It's not like, if you want to be a doctor, please do. That's awesome. It's pretty clear the steps that you need to take to achieve something like that. Pretty laid out. There's a direct line. If you want to be a teacher, like Jeff, you go to school, you know, there's programs, it's very laid out in front of you. To become an artistic director for a board game company, there's no program for that. That's not an established thing. So you have to sort of figure it out and take risks along the way.